People don't want to be responsible for their own choices. And that's one of the worst things about what government does with currency. I think currency it's a little bit like Highlander where there can only be one. And I feel like the decentralization of the media is one of the most beautiful stories of decentralization. Mainstream media is now dead. It's just dead. Those are things that Trump's better on. He's terrible on fiscal policy. I happen to have gotten lucky that I bought in early. I probably have 40% of my net worth in Bitcoin.
Politicians, corrupt. Personal responsibility, gone. Bitcoin, well, some are betting big and winning. Today, we're sitting down with Robbie the Fire Bernstein, host of the Run Your Mouth podcast and comedian torching the status quo one porch at a time. In this unfiltered interview, Robbie unleashes on how the government screws us, why centralized media is dying, and why some people are still hesitant on Bitcoin. But not his audience, they're demanding he accept it as payment. I'm not gonna lie, things get a little bit wild. We also touch on Epstein, Highlander, and alien invasions. Going beyond Bitcoin to bring you the skills and insights you need to escape the fiat matrix, this is Mentor Sessions.
Robbie the Fire Bernstein, thank you so much for joining us. Let's just start right off. We all know that the only source of reliable truth and news these days are comedians. So, number one, who was on the Epstein list and why was it not shown to us? Number two, what will be the price of Bitcoin on Labor Day? And a little bit of a softball question, Israel's Palestinian problem. What's the final solution?
Well, I'm happy that you fronted me with the ability to come up with the final solution, because what I don't like in life is when I put forth my agenda and people think that it's just like early stages. So I like that you're teeing me up with what I'm saying is the final solution. That makes me feel better that people are actually accounting for my words and that they're going to enact it exactly the way that I say it. As for exact Bitcoin pricing, I did spend time on Epstein's Island, and they had some very interesting charts for how they were implementing Bitcoin and trying to sucker the entire internet into purchasing it. And then at some point they would crash it out to force everyone back onto the United States currency. But that's post Labor Day. So you're good for now.
Gotcha.
Keep
Okay.
flying. Ride that wave.
In all seriousness, what do you think is going on with politics? Because I was listening to your show this morning, you and Dave, and you guys are talking about how Dave made an observation that Trump's popularity, his approval rating was decreasing, but there wasn't the converse increase on the Democrat side. Usually Team Red goes down, Team Blue goes up, Team Blue goes up, Red goes down, and vice versa, all that. Is it too much to say that there might be a realignment out there? And if not, what are you seeing on the ground? I mean, you're out there with a porch tour. You're talking to real people. I'm here in the stupid insular tri-state area where, we all think everything stops at the Hudson.
Yeah, well, I do travel the country. I perform on front lawns, back lawns, and I seem to meet the same 40-year-old, moderately autistic guy who has a girlfriend that's too hot for him and really likes drinking, even though he has a career. So I seem to reach a lot of the same people, even though I travel the entire country to meet the exact same person. With that said, yeah, the Democrats are just so bad that it doesn't matter how bad Trump messes up right now. He's still just the better option. So even as you watch the news now and he's doing, I called it before he got into office. I said, listen, he's going to be better on the border and he might be better on wars, but he's not going to be better on Israel. It's a coin toss on Russia, Ukraine, but he's really, dude, it's nice to be rid of the woke stuff and it's nice to be rid of internet censorship. Those are things that Trump's better on. He's terrible on fiscal policy. He's a nightmare. The tariffs, listen, it's actually not favorable because people are pretty obsessed with that Trump's going to return, your factory job. People seem to really like central planning when it's coming from Trump, and they seem to really buy into the ideas of central planning as long as it's Trump doing the If it's Biden's windmills, they don't like it. But if it's Trump's factory jobs, they're all bought in on central planning. The tariffs are chaotic. We'll find out what's actually been implemented. It's amazing the way Trump can go, I had the greatest deal. And then you turn around to read the news and they're like, yeah, no one's reported on any of the details yet, nor has anyone actually agreed to this. So on the tariffs, who the hell knows what's happening? And the fact that in this environment, all he wants is lower interest rates is cartoonishly stupid. But it doesn't matter because these things are if the entire system, if we end up with some asset bubbles actually popping under Trump, people will blame Trump unless that happens. People just aren't aware enough of the economy. It's just kind of like if an asset bubble pops, like it doesn't matter who caused it. It's who's in office that's being blamed. It could be policy from 25, 30, 40 years ago. You can blame it on Nixon for going after gold standard. No one cares. It's whoever's in office right now that's going to be taking the blame for it. But outside of that, the Democrats are just so stupid. And not only are they so stupid, they lied to the American people on so many big topics for so long, and they don't have any talent on the bench right now that can motivate people or sell you on that they're worth backing. So despite the chaos of Trump, he's still just, every once in a while, Kamala Harris or Biden re-peeks their head and you're like, that's right. That's why I voted for Trump. Like I was hating what was going on and I just needed the reminder of this is the other thing that's out there.
And you actually did vote for Trump.
No, I didn't show up to vote. I don't want to feel at fault for this.
Good anarchist position.
There's been many elections I didn't show up to vote either, so I don't blame you at all, man.
I was quietly rooting for Trump because I wanted Kamala Harris to lose. And like I said, there's aspects that actually like affect my life. I mean, like the woke censorship stuff, I was censored quite a bit. I also felt like with Bitcoin, which was interesting, traditionally there's voting blocks that will get the support of the president essentially to bribe them for their vote. I felt like for the first time, I actually had usually I don't really own stocks. I don't own a house. And usually the Fed's propping up those assets. It doesn't really help me, or they're creating favorable policies for individuals that are not me. Donald Trump, he's the first president that ever came along and said, hey, this asset Bitcoin that you own, I'll make sure that the government doesn't ban it. So there were reasons that I was rooting for Trump, but there was enough that I don't like about him that I wasn't going to show up and actually feel like I'm responsible for Donald Trump.
Totally fair. Yeah, Nate, you wanted to jump in there?
No, I was going to say, there were a lot of libertarians and Bitcoiners that did vote for Trump. I think it was the lesser of two evils, and there was a few things that he was offering up. So, again, I'm in Canada, so I couldn't have voted, but maybe if I was down there, I could have snuck in and got in the ballot.
Still could have.
Probably still could have.
A corpse. That's all you got to do. You could have done that in the last election, or just pretend like you're coming in from the southern border, not the northern border. You can vote no problem.
So I've heard. So I think that would be the best way to go, perhaps next time. But the I would have, had I been in that position, I would have voted just to get Ross out. And he actually did do that. And that was the only one okay, you've got me. That's an emotional pull. I would absolutely go for that. I'm just curious too, even looking now in hindsight, do you think that was the best strategy for the libertarians and kind of Bitcoiners to throw their support behind Trump? Is that should they be acting as a voting bloc, or are there different paths to maybe getting the policies or even ideas that we want out there accomplished?
Well, I think if you're a single issue Bitcoin voter, I'm just saying as a theoretical, if that's your single issue and all you care about is, listen, there's a real argument there of Trojan horsing Bitcoin of that. You guys, this is a heavy crypto show, right? Yeah.
This is all right, Bitcoin. Great. That's heavy all it is.
Bitcoin.
Okay.
Bitcoin.
Got it. So there's a real argument, and I'm a fan of Safadine Amous. I don't know if you guys have read his stuff. Okay.
He just talked to his brother.
There you go. I'm in the right place here. I think currency it's a little bit like Highlander, where there can only be one. And you just have what is it? Say's law, Moore's law, good chase out bad. I don't know. I'm not that good with the economy stuff. But the point is, there really is only if one currency actually retains its value and everyone realizes, hey, I want this currency, it will drive out other currencies. And so the fact that we've kind of Trojan horse Bitcoin, that the current administration is not outlawing it, but seems to be flirting with the idea of a reserve. Now they're backing stable coins, which just kind of, I'm sure you guys might not like them, but they do make Bitcoin access and bring more people to the marketplace. So it's probably actually long. I think that's a good environment for Bitcoin. So if you're a single issue voter and you think, hey, the way out of this operation is by everyone opting into this better currency and defunding government because they can't just endlessly steal our wealth through inflation, then amidst the choices of Kamala Harris that might have had an unfavorable regulatory environment for Bitcoin versus Trump, who has at least signaled for the duration of his administration, they're not going to mess with it. And if anything, making moves to back it. I think that's probably why more of the banks and, your pension funds, and it seems like more of a climate that's accepting of it. Which then could be the thing that ultimately undermines the U.S. currency. I'm not sure I'm that bought into that storyline, but I'm just saying if you're a single issue voter for Bitcoin, I think Trump over Kamala Harris was an obvious pick.
I think that's the hope among many of us in the Bitcoin space, and even people kind of tangentially in the Bitcoin space, that's what happens. The government can no longer just print money to do all the horrible things. They're actually constrained by real world economics. On the Highlander metaphor, where are we? Is Sean Connery still alive in this battle for currencies, or are we down to Christopher Lambert and the Kurgan? Tell me where we are in this storyline.
I wish I was enough of a nerd to have watched that movie other than when I was 8 years old and just loving the concept of taking some guy's power by slicing off his head, and that the more people he had killed and sliced off their heads, the more powerful he was.
Yes.
So, but I'm going to say that whatever Donald Trump's stupid cryptocurrency is, and like those are the big guns. I guess you got to, if you can take out Ethereum and whatever else. I don't know.
Yeah. No, very good. All right. I'm disappointed that you didn't step up with the Highlander stuff. It's okay. You can rewatch it and, fully complete the circle there, so to speak.
I didn't even put together in my mind that was Sean Connery in that movie. That's because I watched when I was 8. I just remember someone had a stupid long haircut, and I got to watch a couple people get their heads sliced off. I think that's about all I remember.
I think the movie is still rewatchable. It's never going to be like a 4-star masterpiece, but very rewatchable.
Was there a whole series out of it, or was just one dumb movie?
They did. I mean, we should even be talking Bitcoin. Highlander's much more interesting. They did Highlander, and they did Highlander 2, The Quickening, which was not good. They did a Highlander 3 and a Highlander TV series.
It's funny when you run out of it, and then they got to change the story to some of them managed to regrow their heads. You know what it's like when they just keep something running too long and they kill off a bad guy and they realize the story's not interesting without him, so they got to figure out how to bring him back.
Yeah, Nate, I think this is it. We were looking for extra content beyond podcast. I think we got to do like a Bitcoin Highlander series, like a web series or something.
I think you'd make a great Highlander, Gary. I think you do a wonderful job in that role.
Thanks,
Speaking of the importance of art and culture there, guys. I'm curious too. So Robbie, one of the things I was thinking about in preparation for this too is like you were really, really good on COVID. And I even just going to the opening question just that we threw out there is that it's so weird that we've landed in a position where comedians legitimately are a better source of information like that than the vast majority of academia and journalists out there. I'm curious from your position, what kind of, I guess, bums me out for lack of a better term is that I really anticipated by now, and even with everything still going on, like the conflict, the brief conflict with Iran, and then the Epstein list not being released, I would have thought that we would have kind of learned the lessons and kind of hit that pitchfork phase at some point in time. But it seems like everybody's just gone right back to sleep. So even just from your view, especially being so involved in the news, pre and kind of post-COVID, are things any better in terms of moving that Overton window? Or are we really just kind of the same place or maybe even worse?
All right. Well, in terms of pitchforks, it's the old adage of it's the economy, stupid. And as long as people are employed and their lives are relatively stable and pretty good, they're not grabbing the pitchforks. And I think that's part of the sell of what took place even with COVID was that they sent checks directly to people's doors. And I think without that, they probably wouldn't have had the same level of compliance. What's very different about the current landscape, and some of these things you just forget, but for one, mainstream media is now dead. It's just dead. They cannot sell storylines the way that they used to be able to sell storylines. They just can't. Nobody's turning into CNN or these other outlets and just taking it as gospel. Now, Trump has not quite been the grand savior that everyone thought that he would be. My general takeaway from the Epstein story is that either, Trump's name, listen, I don't think Trump was a pedophile, but I don't know. I also can't say for certain that Epstein was a Mossad or CIA agent and that there was actual 7 or 8-year-old. No one knows. It's everyone's best bet is that essentially he was blackmailing the elites on behalf of intelligence agencies and most likely so that, they could ensure that there was more war or more support for Israel. This is just everyone's basically their best guess. Now, Trump is usually the best at the media cycle, and he just blew that story. He should have run out the clock. For some reason, he wasn't interested in it. It could be that he was front-running the fact that he knew that the media was going to start reporting that his name appeared in it. But even that's everyone's just a guess of what's in there. I'm guessing on Trump, it's just like, listen, he's got goofy things going on in the cryptocurrency space. His kids are wheeling and dealing with the hotels. Mar-a-Lago memberships are up. I don't think he wants to leave office and have the entire deep state going after him once again. And I think now that he's in power, while everyone was all excited of, oh, this is the righteous Donald Trump and he's going to do right by the American people, I think Donald Trump, he'll cut deals, and the deals he'll cut is with the deep state. All right. They offered him the best deal. And so he sat down, he said, hey, I don't want to take this thing on. And so he's essentially just brushing it under the rug. But Donald Trump is still just a rebuke of a lot of the old establishment. It's not quite a cleansing of the swamp, or, you know what I mean? It's not the heroic thing that we all expected, but it still is a change in landscape just having him there, and that he's not censoring the internet, and he's not pushing woke culture, and he's not pushing green energy scams and the whole ESG thing. He's got to listen, he's kind of socialist in his own way, in that he's trying to bring back US manufacturing. It's just a different version of central planning. Well, I guess we'll kind of see how that plays out. But anyways, we're in a different environment than we were pre-Trump. We're not being lied to by the woke left in the same way, because they don't have anyone to sell it and no one's watching the television networks. So I do think that it's a changed environment. In terms of the masses, charging up against the elites, I think you're going to need a financial collapse before you'll see anything like that happen.
No, one can only dream. I actually want to tease out two things there. One, you're right, because when Trump, sorry, Gary, when Trump on the Epstein thing was just,
I think Gary, you might be muted.
You are, buddy. Trump on the Epstein thing was so out of character in the sense that he's really good with a crowd. He's really good on a mic. He's unbelievably persuasive. And so when it first happened, my initial instinct was this is a distraction, that there's something else they don't want us to look at, because he's never this bad on a topic. He can suck the oxygen out of a room and direct it exactly where he wants to go. That's how he got to where he is. So it felt like this was in some way dishonest. But I'm even wondering in hindsight, with the idea of cutting a deal with the deep state, if he's just phoning it in because perhaps it really isn't even necessarily his position, but he's made his choice.
I think he sniffed too many of his own farts, and he got high on his own supply. And he's like, I tricked these people into thinking my tariffs were a good idea. I've tricked them in, you know what I mean? And I think he just thought, hey, my base is so supportive of me that if I tell you, hey, this thing is just a hoax, and we're moving on from it, and don't listen to the liberal media trying to tell you they don't care about this thing, they're just going to use it to bog down the other agenda, which is me helping you out. I think he thought that the base was going to buy that, and he's a little bit surprised by that. This was the line in the sand that people would follow him blindly anywhere. We're like, no, you're not going to tell me that was nothing.
It was a little bit too much of the 2 + 2 is 5 for, I think, most people to swallow. Like, we've been seeing it for so long, but that's an interesting take. And the other thing that I wanted to comment on and kind of get your thoughts on was, I agree that like corporate media is dead or dying. Like, it's on its way out. There's no audience anymore. But I wonder if it kind of cuts as a double-edged sword. So the idea I had was that, one, now you can have all these new ideas or even old ideas that are resurging and kind of gaining in popularity. You have all these voices and people participating in the market, but kind of as a result, it means that we're all off in our little niche kind of area of the internet, our little fandom, our little area that we're hanging out. And so I wonder if that in some ways kind of limits how hard we can push these things. Like, even specifically thinking about the libertarian ideas, like you have Tucker and you have Joe Rogan even touching on them from time to time, but it still doesn't really seem to permeate. And I wonder if it's because, like, we're beyond the point of, to take like a musical example, we're never really going to have a superstar like Madonna or Michael Jackson again, because there's not one channel and one radio and one MTV. It's everyone's off in their own little corner, which means moving everyone in a direction culturally is maybe next to impossible at this point.
Ooh, there's a lot there that I'd have to digest and think about it. But for one, I think I mean, especially as just a fan of, let's go, just Bitcoin. I know I'm not supposed to say crypto,
That's right.
but you've got to be a fan of decentralization. And I feel like the decentralization of the media is one of the most beautiful stories of decentralization, because it's like, in the past, in the comedy space on television, there was one time when it was Johnny Carson and Johnny Carson only, right? And he was probably making, let's just say, I don't know, maybe $20 million a year. How many people are making a living now off of creating their own comedy content? I'm not talking rich, but I'm just saying in a different environment. I mean, not that I'm rich from podcasting. I make some money podcasting, but there was a time I just couldn't have done this. So just in theory, I feel like the decentralization of the media it's such a great storyline, and maybe that might actually awaken some people to getting regulation out of other spaces, because that's the real story of how does everyone have wealth. It's you get rid of government, which is what's actually protecting, creating the protectionist policies. I like to just summarize it as the elites don't like to compete. And everyone's all afraid that corporations are coming for you. And what they don't realize is that government's the tool, by which they then can just steal from you as opposed to having to actually create value in order to the only way that in an honest market, the only way that anyone ever gets your money is if they give something of value to you. The only thing that distorts that equation is the government stepping in with force, which then means that people can extract wealth from you without actually, giving you goods, services, or something that's of value, and then competitively, whatever is actually the best of value. I have horrible ADD. What the hell did you ask me?
It's funny. You answered it beautifully, and you actually made me reflect on one point too, because you're absolutely right. In decentralization, particularly with information or money, is the best way to go. I wonder if in my own kind of thinking about that is my timeline's too short and I have long enough time preference.
People are bigger now than ever, though. Like, even in your examples, Taylor Swift, who has zero appeal to me, she's got to be the biggest ever. And if you look at how many comedians now are filling up stadiums, it's more than ever did it at any other point in time. So if anything, it feels like more people are like, I don't, you might have a point that people don't move in mass in the same way. Like maybe you're not going to have grunge music, but like, I bet if we were actually alive, I mean, I was in like 8th grade, but I was like at the tail end of grunge. But while you might look back at that and see that as a movement, how many people were still listening to classic rock and how many people weren't, you know what I mean? So my guess is I bet if you actually looked at the analytics, this is very autistic, although it feels like people don't move in mass because it's almost the media doesn't report to you on like, here's a movement of whatever. I bet there's more people engaged with like specific, like for example, Kill Tony. I bet in like a Comedy Central era, you might have pointed to that as like more of a movement. But if you actually looked at the numbers, that's more of a cultural experience than like you actually quite comprehend, because it's not like the traditional media selling you on the cultural movement of this thing. So my guess is what I'm trying to say is like, if you feel like we're in an environment now where like the culture doesn't move in mass, well, Trump would be the ultimate example of that not being true. But I bet that's just the perception of like, the environment we're living in. But if you actually looked at the numbers of interest for specific things or engagement by people, I bet it's overall higher because of the access to just general media on the internet, as opposed to like, having to go through a newspaper or television.
It's very interesting. And one, I want to point out that this is a Bitcoin channel, so autism is more than welcome. And then number two, that I think you're right. And I think perhaps the one thing that I wasn't accounting for was just time, and that there's still a generational aspect. Like once the entire basic populace has been on podcasts and been on the internet for their life, we love you Gen X, but if you've moved on and boomers are gone, then perhaps the best ideas really can rise to the top without any sort of issue. And they do have that kind of cultural movement. Gary, I've been hogging the mic. Go for it, buddy.
No, not at all. The idea of everybody in their own little space, and like you said, in the old days, it was Johnny Carson, and he was basically the gatekeeper, and you had 3 networks, and what you saw is what you saw, and everybody kind of went along with it. And now we have much more opportunity, like you said, where people can maybe not get filthy rich, but make a living at comedy or podcasting, all sorts of entertainment. When I grew up, I'm a little bit older than you. It was always more or less an expectation, at least politically, because you're very political, obviously, that if comedians I saw on TV got into politics, it was almost always in favor of the political left. Like if they took a side, it was almost always on the political left. And that seems to have shifted in recent years. I see a lot, especially in the podcast space, independent comedy. I see a lot of it moving to the right, whether it's MAGA or reactionary or libertarian or ANCAP or whatever. I guess I'm wondering, what do you see? Is that a movement? Is that a shift? Or is it just now these people who have always been in comedy and had these views suddenly have an outlet where they're maybe not being censored or suppressed as much?
I don't know that I have my finger on the pulse of that one, but it would kind of seem to, I mean, for so long, if you wanted a Hollywood job, you had to play ball. And that kind of included being a lefty, You would literally lose work if you were conservative or, it's just kind of, and so the networks don't exist anymore. I mean, what comedian is like trying to get a late night spot to build their career? Who's trying to get on Comedy Central? I mean, like for the first 7 or 8 years of my career, that was the game, was you were trying to get on television. You were trying to be in these outlets. If anything, people are almost just trying to appeal to the masses at the moment, which is like conspiracy nutcase of Twitter. And so I think the market at the moment almost rewards how batshit do you want to go and pretending what your views are, because batshit kind of rises to the top at the moment.
That's totally fair. Personal question. Were you into comedy before politics or vice versa?
No, I was definitely more interested in comedy, and then found myself more in the political alley as I kind of went about my career. Big part of that is just one is it. I remember watching comedians bullshitting about politics and finding it irritating that they actually knew nothing and had nothing to say. And as I watched the climate kind of change, where comedians were kind of expected to talk about these issues, I was like, well, I'd like to actually be informed. I don't really like being an asshole. So I'm like, I'll
No, you
actually,
don't like it?
I mean, sometimes I'll be a
Okay,
contrarian, but I'm just saying, like, I don't love talking about things I know nothing about. Like that does
fair.
not doesn't per. A lot of comedians do it. A lot of comedians don't read anything and will shout from the hilltop like they're the most knowledgeable and informed on a particular thing that they know nothing about.
Can
I
I get some
also started.
names?
What was that?
Is that could I get some names?
Yeah, after the show. I'm not gonna be throwing people under the bus on air. But I do the show with Dave, and he's more politically aligned than I am. I also kind of wanted to do more like political jokes, and I realized how just informed Dave was, and how much that was kind of informing the angles on his comedy. And then just from doing political radio to what is a growing audience, it's just that same thing of like, well, shit, there's going to be 200,000 people listening to me on this tomorrow. I better know what the fuck I'm talking about.
That's responsible. I'm sure there are a lot of people that don't give a fuck and they'll just go up, like you said, and pontificate.
I
Where did
certainly fill in the blanks with bullshit, but I do my best to try and be informed so that, at least it's rooted in something.
I'm curious how much you think your own upbringing has informed your comedy or your politics. I was listening again to you and Dave this morning, and you were talking about how you went to Israel when you were 8 or 9, and it was like finally a break from you to not be kosher, and you could go eat Burger King, and like this is a big thrill for you. And full disclosure, I'm a Heb. The name doesn't look it, but my mom's side Ashkenazi Jew, Reformed. I went to
Really?
I went to Hebrew
Wow,
school.
you're an
I
undercover Islamic.
I know. I know. I pass a lot of places. I did the bar mitzvah for grandma. That was the last time I ever set foot in a temple. I don't practice anything now. I could have gone on birthright if I wanted to. I never had any desire or interest. But how does your upbringing, whether your religious upbringing, your cultural upbringing, like I don't even know where you grew up. Like, how has that informed your politics and your comedy?
Geez, man, I feel like I'm an NPR. I don't think about these things. I think I probably have a little bit of an outsider's perspective growing up Orthodox Jewish, and I'm sure that my worldview is a little bit different than the general cultures because of that upbringing, and I'm sure that that creates some like comedic angles of things that I'm seeing that other people aren't seeing. But I don't really reverse engineer my thinking in that capacity.
No, totally fine. How did you get to the point of being so skeptical about like American interventionism across the globe?
Ooh, that's another loaded question. Well, what's interesting was I did get a finance degree in college, and I thought something that was and when I was in college, for one, I had one internship at a hedge fund, and it was right at the start of the 2008 financial crisis. And one of the things that was interesting was also by the time I was looking to graduate college, we were in the middle of a recession and there were no jobs. And so I can tell you, I had actually studied in college the credit asset bubble that the government had created with the housing market and the collapse that it led to. And then I was graduating college in an environment with zero jobs. And I was angry about it. Like I literally could see literally like there was a government policy that is now creating an environment that I'm going to move back into my parents' house and feel like I'm a fucking loser. Whereas like 20 years earlier, if I had graduated college, I probably would have left and gone right to Wall Street and had some job working phones and selling some horse shit to some guy who's going to retire. But I'm taking that money. All right. So the point I'm trying to say is I really graduated college with a knowledge of, wow, government just fucked me over. And then there were other things that I just read at that time that really grabbed my interest. You know, there's this guy, George Reisman. I started reading his blogs, just really changed my mind on a lot of topics, gun control. There were a lot of topics like I kind of would have been a lefty on, social health care, like a lot of stuff. And I read those guys' articles and just instantly my viewpoint was changed on it. And then, about 4 years into comedy, I started hanging out with Dave, who is a much more knowledgeable libertarian than I am. And he started handing me like Murray Rothbard and the other stuff. And so I guess that's kind of when I downloaded more of that information.
No, totally fair. That's totally fine. And I assume, I mean, you seem like a very open-minded guy. I assume you'd probably be open-minded that your views could change somewhat in the future with even more information.
I would love that. It almost bothers me now that I very rarely read things that like, it used to be like having an orgasm. You would read something and go, holy shit, I was so wrong on this. That is a fascinating argument. It seems to happen so rarely now. It seems like I see, and maybe it's that I'm in my own feedback loop, but I seem to read a lot of things that kind of reinforce ideas that I already have or kind of expand on what I already know. But I very rarely read something that's like a total, like, wow, I never saw the universe that way. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's very difficult to go down the Rothbard and Mises rabbit hole and then find something that persuades you otherwise later.
Very
Yes.
fair.
Yeah, I would agree with that take.
Imagine mining Bitcoin cheaper than buying on an exchange with direct payouts hitting your wallet like clockwork. SAS Mining makes it real. You own the rig, no gimmicks. It's your asset pumping out Bitcoin every single day. No markup on hardware or electricity. They get paid when you get paid, fully aligning incentives. Mining Bitcoin below exchange cost is a great way to DCA your stack. It's so simple, anyone can do it. No tech skills required. You get white glove support and education, a rig performance guarantee. Plus, it's powered by 100% carbon-free energy prioritizing renewables. Ready to take control of your Bitcoin future? Visit sasmining.com by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the description down below to book a free consult and start mining today. Are you still delaying taking self-custody of your Bitcoin? Do you feel secure in your current Bitcoin setup? If something were to happen to you, would your stack make it to your loved ones? At Bitcoin Mentor, we've helped thousands of people level up their Bitcoin security and fast-track their understanding. If you find that you simply don't have the time to go through all the books, the tutorials, the guides, you can book a free one-on-one strategy session with myself, Gary, or any of the other great mentors by visiting bitcoinmentor.io. Scan the QR code or simply click the link in the description down below to find out how Ben and the entire expert team at Bitcoin Mentor can help you accelerate your Bitcoin journey.
Use promo code BTC Sessions for 10% off.
Jumping back for 1 second, because I want to touch on this. Also, I want to point out that I love that the story of Robbie the Fire is basically a revenge story against the government. Like, they didn't know what they created when they screwed you over in 2008.
There you go. Yeah.
Beautiful. Going back to Batshit Crazy Conspiracies. Batshit Crazy Conspiracies, because we know those get a lot of views and clicks. Has anything caught your attention recently, or what's the wildest thing you've come across in all your digging?
Recent conspiracies that are just batshit crazy. Man, I'm fumbling on that one. I feel like everything's just been like Epstein tariff talk lately. I don't know. I mean, there's that crazy storyline of whatever people are claiming is some giant alien thing. That one I haven't even dug into, but there's some giant thing headed towards Earth that they want to claim are aliens coming. And then there's also the storyline of like the typical conspiracy theorists saying, oh yeah, if anyone claims that aliens are coming, it's COVID 2.0, where they're going to tell you got to go back into your house and we're going to control you. So, I mean, if you want to just go follow a batshit storyline, it's something's coming to Earth and someone wants to claim it's aliens and other people want to claim that that's the government just trying to pretend like it's aliens. That's about as batshit as it gets.
That's a great one. On that same note, too, like the whole, was it like the UFO or what is it, UAV now, unmanned aerial vehicle or whatever it is, testifying in Congress or the Senate. Like, again, I'm not buying that that's actually there, that it's not, that it's aliens, but the fact that we're in the timeline where the government is saying, yes, there are UFOs is really weird.
Yeah, there's nothing that's going to get me not to believe something sooner than the government acknowledging it.
You know,
Yeah,
we're talking about, go ahead.
No, you go for it.
No, I was going to say, we're talking about batshit crazy stuff. And for a long time, I used to work in the government. I did for about 6 years, and we'd have people write letters in. You know. Yeah, I know.
Dude, he's an actor. He's a CIA plant. I already figured this out.
Basically. We'd have people write these letters in, and they'd sometimes sound and come off really crazy. And I'm sure to some degree they were. And for a long time, I had been like very, very anti-conspiracy. Just if only because of the Occam's razor aspect of it. Like, a conspiracy is like really, really hard to keep secret. Like, part of a conspiracy is you need everybody to keep it secret. It's really just hard to do. I'm not opposed to the idea of them, but in recent years, in fact, I'd say even over just the past couple of years, the more and more I read, I'm not necessarily saying I'm buying into everything I'm reading, but having already been skeptical of the government and thinking they've really done a lot of fucked up things, now I'm like, oh, I haven't gone far enough. They've done things even more fucked up than I've realized. So with all that said, I guess my question is, how do you sort the wheat from the chaff? How do you, Robbie Bernstein, say, okay, this sounds just effing crazy. That doesn't make sense. But maybe there's a nugget of truth to this thing. I should go digging in.
All right. Well, for starters, government and information, it's one big circle jerk. And it's important for the audience to realize that. And what I mean by that is if you never read Anatomy of the State, it talks about the relationships between basically the elites and the academics. And the elites will spend basically money on the work of the academics if it's the opinion of what they're looking to portray into the world. And then those academics, it's signal to us of like, oh, look, those are the wealthy, prestigious academics because of all the money that's coming from the elites, just because they're putting out what those people want, what the information that they want to have. The best example of that concept is there was a Rick and Morty episode where the dad is talking about how Pluto is a planet. And then all of a sudden they bring him to Pluto and represent him as a scientist because he's the one guy that will say that Pluto's a planet.
Yep.
And in terms of like, if you're just absolutely like conspiracy, it doesn't exist. I mean, just look at the green scam that took place over Biden and look at the COVID storyline. And it's kind of just Carlin's, it's a big club and you're not in it. It's not so much that all these people have to get into the same room and coordinate. It's just that there has to be enough of incentive structure for them all to be on the same team. So if like Harvard and everyone doesn't want to criticize Fauci because they've got NIH grants coming in, then that just reinforces that thing. Doesn't mean that the head of Harvard ever sat down in a room with Fauci and decided, hey, we're going to sell everyone on this COVID thing. It's just that enough incentive structures are in place for everyone to kind of play ball on the same storyline. Now, in terms of how do I like sift through it and call out bullshit, I worked in sales, so I kind of have a pretty good gauge for honest information. And usually people lie in two ways. One, it's kind of like it's safe and effective, where they won't give you any specifics whatsoever. That's usually a tell of usually if someone has a good reason for something, they will tell you the reason. And the reason that they won't give you any information is because they don't have any to support their claims. And so I'm kind of like on a case-by-case basis of everything that that's kind of in the news that week, where, I hear something and sometimes you're just like, well, I don't think that makes sense. And then you start doing the research of, well, did they give any of the specifics behind? Like Trump does this all the time. Hey, I worked out a deal. What's the deal? And there's no information on it. All right. So I'm pretty sure it's not a good deal. I don't know. If it's a good deal, you would just tell me what the deal was. You would go, hey, they agreed to this and here's why it's great. If you can't do that, you probably don't have anything good here. So anyways, for me, it's just, I've worked in sales. I can kind of see some of the tricks of how people lie or how they represent information. One of the best examples with when Biden was claiming with the border wall that he didn't have the authority to police the border, but if Congress would grant it to him, then he would start closing the border after 5,000 people cross a day. And then I remember I dug in on that one, and 5,000 people was like the current level of illegal border crossings. So he's basically just trying to legalize what's currently illegal border crossings. And then once they, once that storyline kind of made it to the public, then they decided to deal with the border. But he was just lying. So I don't know. Sometimes it's like, you just have to hear it and go, I don't think that checks out, or what's the reason that they're telling me? And to be honest, Twitter Gronk has made it so much easier because you can basically just plug things in and go, hey, have they given you any information to support this? Like COVID times was tough, man. COVID times, like especially in the early COVID times, you're just like, I think you're lying to me. I mean, I had to learn about all sorts of sciencey things that I know nothing about, but I just knew that they were lying. It didn't make sense. You were stripping my freedom for some thing that wasn't a vaccine that you're calling about. I don't have to rehash all that shit. Your audience probably knows it and it's boring, but sometimes like the starting point is just like, I don't know, this doesn't smell right. And then you read up on it and you can usually validate your point of view, or sometimes you're like, no, that checks out. And then you go, all right, my intuition was wrong.
Fair.
No, I completely agree. And I think there's kind of an advantage being there's an advantage being a libertarian of one flavor or another. You tend to be most susceptible to propaganda that you agree with. And so kind of being this weird autistic third leg of the political spectrum means that you're not really in either camp, and you probably have an even more sensitivity to when they're lying. And even just going back to COVID and thinking about the incentives there too, it wasn't even just directly financial, right? There seemed like such social, I was in the universities at the time and they all just completely agreed. And you could tell that it was very much so just that social tribal behavior that it wasn't marching orders. It was almost like closing ranks on their ivory tower.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with the Libertarian Party is if you're libertarian, you're probably not that into compliance or being in groups.
Yeah. Speaking of the Libertarian Party, too, I'm actually curious if you have any thoughts or views on it generally as a vehicle for both political change or even just putting the ideas and information out there. Because disappointingly, I would argue that like yourself and comedians and podcasters in Bitcoin has done so much more for libertarian ideas and information than any of the political organizations have been able to achieve.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay out of the real political lane of party politics. That's just not for me. I'm already like a little bit too far into political commentary in my pursuit of stand-up comedy. If I was in charge of the Libertarian Party in the last election, I probably would have used it to endorse Trump, and I would have looked for more concessions than just Bitcoin and free Ross. We actually did an episode of Part of the Problem where I wrote my list of 7 things that I was looking for in the current climate. I think if Donald Trump, I think if the tariffs, I think there might be more of an opening for the third party to actually exist. With all that said, it's not really my field of interest.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. Gary?
Do you think, I mean, we say in Bitcoin, as Lynn Alden says, nothing stops this train, and we're $37 trillion in debt. Do the people you see out when you're doing your porch tour out in middle America, do they have any sense of how supremely fucked we are and how there really is no way out of this aside from just totally debasing their money? I mean, do they get it? Is there a sense of that at all?
Well, my audience is listening to my show and they're pretty sophisticated. And sometimes they get mad at me that I'm not accepting Bitcoin payments. I think my audience, because I've talked about the bear story quite a few times, I think that they're pretty looped in on it. I think your typical American to this day, when I start talking about the amount of money that's been spent over the last 20 years and asset bubbles, as I've discussed, it's over their head. And not only is it over their head, it just seems so catastrophic that it's like impossible to them that we would be ignoring such a big problem. And so in that way, there still is like kind of like what that COVID compliance was, that people are still just buying into the system a little bit. And like they just can't believe that it's that kind of doomsday-ish of what do you mean my house and my stock, unless they inflate it to all my other wealth to nothing, is not just going to continuously go up in value. It's really not something that people don't want to be responsible for their own choices. And that's one of the worst things about what government does with currency is that I don't want to do it. I work like, you know how many hours I put into podcasting and stand up? The last thing I want to do is when I actually save some money is figure out what kind of risk I want to take and how I want to allocate it. That is not how I want to spend my time at all. And I'm telling you, every like doctor, lawyer, every single person that's working their ass off, like a lot of times people don't mind a bad choice as long as it wasn't their choice and they're not at fault for it. And so if you've got your financial advisor telling you, no, you got to be 70% in stocks, you got to be blank in your house, you got to be this and that, people don't want to think about this shit. That was partly the COVID compliance. Well, my doctor's saying I should do it. I'm not going to listen to some conspiracy nut. I don't want to think it. Like people don't want to be responsible for their decisions. Part of the pitch of government is we're going to step in and we're going to be the parent in here. We're going to make and like people don't realize, well, if somebody's lying to you about good decisions, that's not better. But it's so just to your point, my audience is pretty in the loop on it. I think the general population, they do not want to be responsible for their own decisions. And the like degree of contrarian that you have to be like, I don't want to own stocks, or I don't want to be in stocks for the last 3 years because PE ratios are at 30. Like, and you're just sitting on fucking cash and losing it. Or if you, I'm not personally all in Bitcoin. I happen to have gotten lucky that I bought in early. And so from like if I was sitting down with the financial advisor, he would tell me I should be selling some Bitcoin and reallocating it. Like I probably have 40% of my net worth in Bitcoin. That's not because I've saved 40% of my money and put it in. I'm just saying at the current allocation, that's probably about like what my net worth is in Bitcoin. For most individuals, like you don't want to take the risk of being in a single, like I understand that to you guys, this is currency. Most people don't want to make the decision to work contrarian against the entire, and that's why the people that do it, if they end up being right, will be rewarded. But I'm just saying for most individuals, like wait, so instead of taking out a loan and buying this house that I can live in or investing in a business, I'm going to just hold this alternative currency that gamers, bros, and libertarians like. You know what I mean? If that doesn't work out, then when you're at the bar, you feel like an asshole. That's what I'm talking about. People don't like feeling like an asshole. And so they'd rather just go with what everyone else is doing. And then if it blows up, well, I was doing what everyone else was doing.
That's totally fair. No, I get that. Yeah, I think we all do it in our lives, especially things that we don't know. We only have so much bandwidth in the day to cover things we're interested in. I just took my car to get my tire fixed the other day. I trust my guy who fixes my tire down the block, and he's trying to explain to me. I said, listen, I mean, I appreciate you trying to explain to me the thing here. You've always been good to me. I've known you for 2 years. You're an honorable, trustworthy guy. If you say I need to spend $1,400 and change tires on my car, I'll just spend the $1,400 and change tires on my car.
I have those moments all the time with people, and I have to bite my tongue. But I had the other day, I was out on the porch. Something bit me and it kind of blew up, and I got nervous that I had a tick bite. And I've not seen a doctor in like 4 years, but this one made me nervous enough where I was like, I think I got to go get this checked. And I go in to get it checked, and the doctor starts giving me like this whole rundown and I'm like, do I need medication for a tick bite or not? Like, you're going to send me whatever bill you're going to send me. I don't need to waste more of your time or my time. I don't care about any of this information. You can just walk into the room, look at it, go yes or no, and we can call it a fucking day. But I'll tell you, you know what that is in part? I had this I'm a bald man. I'm not totally clean shaven at the minute. I look like an old man. I got the George Costanza going on. I shave it once a week. The other days I wear a hat. But I remember when I used to go to the barber for him to shave my head, he would still dress it up and pretend like he's cutting on the sides. And he'd keep you in the chair for 20 minutes. He'd still rub his dick on your elbow. He would do all the things because he still wants a tip. And otherwise, he's going to charge you less? And so I stopped going. I started shaving my own head. But
why not?
A lot of career professionals, they're doing that. They're giving you the this, that, the other thing. And, just kind of justifies the bill you get.
No, it totally makes sense. I feel like a lot of life is that. I mean, even just, my kids in school, whatever the local government school is. What are you actually learning there? I mean, this is glorified daycare. Let's just be real. It's a place to leave my kids for such and such hours throughout the day. And you need to justify your big salary with your degree or saying we're learning this or that. And most learning doesn't even come from school. But anyway, that's a whole other tangent. Yeah, it's just a lot of justifying your position. And that's fine. For me, I would just say, call it what it is. I'll pay you the money. He's happy. You're happy. We're all happy. Just be honest with me. That's fine.
Yeah. I would give it to people straight. Hey, man, I'm recommending new tires. Do you want to just do it or do you need the explanation?
Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah.
That's totally the case. Do you think, you guys were talking, you guys talk about this a lot, you and Dave, about the idea of, there are certain things with the two political parties that they're going to agree on and they're going to do. And the fighting between them kind of happens at the margins. And one of the things, obviously, is just America's unconditional support for Israel. No matter who it is, Republican, Democrat, Team Red, Team Blue, year after year, Israel wants something, they get it, and sometimes then some. Do you ever see that changing? How could it possibly change? I guess this is all wrapped up in how do you see this particular latest part of the conflict in Gaza ending, and obviously in the West Bank as well. And I ask this, obviously, I don't want to see people hurt or killed wherever they are, especially kids, whether they're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, atheist, whatever. I don't care what make-believe sky creature you worship. I don't want to see kids killed. But even just for America's interest, I mean, this stuff creates blowback. People see who we're supporting over there without question. So even if you don't care about all, those other people over there, this is hurting our country. Do you ever see this changing? And if so, how?
Yeah. So I think what people need to realize about government is that it's a self-serving entity and they will rule over us to whatever capacity we allow them to. I think some of the best examples of that was when they teased, having a domestic terrorism title after January 6th, or when they had that, the Ministry of Information, whatever power we cede to government, they're going to take it. But the flip side of that is if the audience and the voting public is outraged over something, at some point, the problem is sometimes they just lie their way into office and then it's new boss, same as the old boss type deal. But in the current media landscape, there's things that I don't know, because even on the Israel topic, like in the next election, I could see someone being like, yeah, we're not supporting them anymore. And then they get into office and they just then send them checks and weapons. So, there does seem to be a lot of, when you're on the outside, you make grand claims of what you're going to get done. and then you get in and it's just kind of, you play ball with the machine. But I do think that I really think it's an educational issue. And with free media, there's a capacity for people kind of becoming like, I don't know that there's endless Israel support. Like, it certainly seems like at the moment it's still ongoing, but I don't know that that's endless. You know what I mean? Like, particularly this past week was a big change in the way that the media was sharing more images and sharing the starvation story. Americans don't want that. Like, if that story is actually in the media and reported on for long enough, it'll come to an end. And then it's kind of a capacity where it's like, if there's so much reporting on something that doesn't exist in traditional media at all, and it just kind of continues to erode, why would I watch traditional media? They're not actually telling me what's going on in the world. So the answer is I kind of agree with you in that it seems grim and that, people lie when they're on the outside to get in. And then once they're in, they just seem to enact the exact same agenda, more or less. But there does seem to be an aspect of public outrage. And if the public really sinks its teeth into something or they really care about something, there will be a change on that issue. For this last election, I think immigration was a big one. And that's why we have seen a change in immigration policy. And, I guess theoretically, the problem with the Israel thing is that it's not here. And
Yeah,
at the end of the day, people care about what's here more than what they care about
of
what's
course.
there.
It's human nature, of
Yeah,
course.
and so it would be tough to have like a single voter issue of there being so much outrage over what's happening there that people would be like, "Oh, I'll vote for AOC, even though I don't agree with a single one of her economic policies, but she's actually going to end the situation. She's going to end support for Israel." Like, I
Mm.
think, you know what I mean? Most red-blooded Americans, if they think AOC is going to cost you your job, but she's going to end the famine in Gaza, you're picking your job.
Of course, that's what people do. It's understandable. It's human nature. You look at for your own family and what's nearest to you. It doesn't make you a bad person or anything. It's just what humans do. No, I totally get that.
I would largely agree. Even just to point to something you said earlier, that really for there to be large public sway on kind of any of those issues, I think you're right in the sense that something has to blow up first. Like, you've got to lose your job and kind of fall down that Maslow's hierarchy of needs before you might really start be taking issue with where money is being directed. Otherwise, when you're hurting, that there's going to have to be the bubble pop, there's going to have to be mass kind of layoffs. Then people will basically turn inward and be really focused on what they need right now.
Yeah, the problem with whatever the next collapse will be is that while people could get educated and figure out that it's the Fed and that it's money inflation, socialism and totalitarianism seems to be more attractive when people are outraged over the mistakes of previous administrations.
Yeah. Yeah,
No, I agree.
looking
That's
for
why we need Hayek's sly roundabout way. And that's why I'm so invested in Bitcoin. Is 'cause I think you're right. It's that Trojan horse. It's taking away the option at some point in time.
Well, I hope you're right and that it wasn't created by the NSA and that at some point they just collapse it in on you. But, that's the gamble that we're all taking.
No, 100%. Robbie, I do want to be respectful of your time, but I had two other questions that I want to squeeze in there if I could. One, with all your travels for the Porch Tour, where's the best sandwich in America that you found so far?
Oh, man.
Right. And while you're thinking about that, number two, is there another comedian, whether up or coming or someone well established, that like you really respect or you really enjoy or take some inspiration from?
Okay. Well, let's go with the second question first because that's actually easier to answer. And my roster of openers are like intimidatingly talented. Where sometimes I see them working on new jokes or otherwise. My friend Menu and Heart, I cannot believe that guy's not famous at this point. My friend Chris Faga is absolutely hilarious. I got a friend Chris Warren who I met in the open mic scene a couple years ago. He does a lot of these with me. There's a bunch of guys I met out on the road. I have them with me. So by and large, I like the guys that I'm working with are usually because I was out in some market and I saw them and I'm like, man, this kid's killing it. And I definitely, I don't spend enough time in New York anymore just because I'm on the road basically every weekend for 4-day weekends. Then I'm podcasting all week. So I don't really know what's going on in the cities anymore, but I definitely, some of the guys I work with, I'm like, shit, I got to work harder. These guys are coming up with new and great jokes, which is good. That's who you want to be around. Here's the thing. I love sandwiches and I'm such a fatty, but overeating, it's kind of a home game activity. I got a sensitive Jewish stomach, so I really do most of my overeating at home. I don't do a lot of overeating on the road because I'm constantly on the move and you're like, I got a flight in 10 minutes. I'm like, that looks incredible, but I'm not going to eat it. And so when I'm out on the road, I tend to actually eat a little bit cleaner than where I'm at home. And while I love like a cartoonishly large sandwich, like if I saw a billboard like the cartoonishly large sandwich shop, I'd be like, fuck, I got a gig in an hour. Like, I'd really like to eat there, but shit, I can't do that right now.
Do you have any traditional kosher dish that you would recommend?
Oh, I miss kosher food. I don't want to keep religion anymore, but I love like some of the old school. Like, dude, I remember I was once out in Florida and I went to this like kosher delicatessen with the lady brought me there, and I was eating like I felt like my grandfather, dude. I was eating like stuffed cabbage and rugelach, and I was like, this is great. Cholent's great, potato kugel, kishka, like the authentic like Eastern European poor people Shabbat foods. Oh my God, I wish I could get that somewhere.
That's good stuff, man. I grew up with
Yeah,
some of that myself. Good
yeah.
stuff.
And particularly some like those like a really good chocolate babka. I haven't had that in forever, but it's gotta be like dank, you know what I mean? Like where it's like moist on the inside.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I like that. That's good. I eat a lot of barbecue on the road. I'm a big fan of barbecue because I don't like I like not having to like go through a waiter and wait on food type deal. You know what I mean? I like being able
Mhm.
I like the tray. I like the tray system. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They're just done right on the spot and I'm good to go.
Yep.
Well,
Shovel it
barbecue is the
down.
perfect porch food. It absolutely makes sense to be eating a ton of barbecue on the road. Beautiful. Robbie, with that, can you tell me where can people go to check out the Porch Tour, check out you, follow you, all that fun stuff? And also, lastly, I'll throw in there
Yeah.
is you not accepting Bitcoin payments for the tickets yet. So if you need some help setting that up, I will just have Gary drive over and do it for you.
Okay, perfect. Nice of you to volunteer Gary's services. What is your rec for ticketing through Bitcoin?
Easiest way to probably do it, there's a company out of Austin called Zaprite, and it makes it really easy to integrate like traditional fiat payments and then Bitcoin payments just on the website side. So you can just have it up and good to go.
All right, maybe I'll look into that. And at the moment, I hate it. And every single Porch Tour season, I say I'm going to get off Eventbrite, and then I just have the capacity to copy and paste like the old links, and I stay there. But anyways, come catch me out on Porch Tour. I don't think anyone's else done this in comedy. I'm literally touring the country, playing people's backyards. It's quite the hangout. It's a party. I do my show. We drink all night on people's lawns. Sometimes I sleep in their houses and I eat their food. It's a good old time. Yeah, it's a good time. And if I had to recommend one, like if there was one porch site to recommend, it's August 30th at my friend Max's. It's a remote location, but I stack it with comics. We got a concert for my friends. We're doing this thing called the Smoke Out Bug Out, which it's essentially four people smoke an ounce of weed in an hour. And it's a bullshitters game where I ask them like the Harvard extemporaneous debate questions, and we see who can. You don't have to know what the fuck you're talking about. It's just if you can sell the audience on that you do know what you're talking about. And then other than that, Run Your Mouth podcast. That's my personal pod.
Sweet, man. Love it. And where is Max's house, by the way? So if in case
That's
people
in
wanna
Myersville, Maryland.
go. All
But
right.
if you're not in this area, I got porches all over the country. I got a Tennessee run coming up, California run. So just go to porchtour.com and come check out the porch.
If you enjoyed this episode with Robbie the Fire Bernstein, please do like and subscribe, and check out the previous episode with Luke Groman for his macroeconomic update.